All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special Grafana Agent Community Call meeting. This one is on Friday, September the 30th, and hopefully be a pretty interesting or exciting one. We've got a lot to talk about, but I put at the beginning of the agenda if we had any question, comments, or feedback in general. And actually, I thought we had Irva posted up questions about 2043 about RBAC being configured. So we should probably take a look at that. Just took time to come here and bring it up. So that's related to the operator, which Craig is probably the go-to person there. And we probably don't have an answer right now, but we can definitely dig into it and try to figure out why you're not getting correct errors. Because it should definitely be spitting out something. And if you have any additional kind of context around that, it would be much appreciated to put it on that.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I think we tried to put all we could. It was not me. It was a colleague of mine. So first of all, I know that he was quite puzzled by why it didn't work, and he found out that it was how to fix it when he used the base tool, and so he said, "Wow, fantastic! I have logs there, and I can fix it." So he gave up on using Grafana Agent, and I think it's quite a pity. And that's a little bit about the point where I've already talked about people during low-key community calls, and they say that it was a weak point of the agent, that it's quite hard to debug it because the base tools are hidden inside it, like Promptail and stuff like that. So when I've seen the announcement about the new interface and the flow stuff, I'm not much interested in the flow stuff. Maybe because I don't have the use for now, but I see there's an interface and there's some health information and maybe some help on how to debug the failing targets. And for me, that's really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get into Flow here in a bit, but one of our key goals of Flow is just offering more information about what's going on in the system in a more easy to digest manner than just simply, scattering through the logs, or even worse in this case, where there appears to be no logs that are kind of being spit out. So I think there's a big opportunity, as we're reevaluating things to really, make it more interrogatable. I'm not sure if that's the right word. Easier to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
I'm looking through the issue. It seems like this problem is coming from upstream. Because it's not that you couldn't, it seems like it's not that you couldn't scrape anything. It's just that the discovery didn't work, right? So it wasn't discovering any pods to scrape. And you're right, like that is hidden. Flow wouldn't fix that right now. But I think the main issue is that the Kubernetes service discovery from Prometheus doesn't log anything ever if there's a failure. Maybe it doesn't know something failed, but I think this is something we'll have to help upstream fix so we can expose those errors in log lines for debugging.
Yeah, I wonder what, because the ticket says that the operator made the errors. Is that just because we don't have the newest version?
So Pascalis, well, it's a Prometheus operator works a little bit differently. Like Prometheus operator is using the CRDs and it'll log things, but once it reaches the Prometheus SD level, the errors will get hidden. Actually, in Pascalis, you tagged this as operator. Hervé, are you actually using the operator here, the Grafana Agent operator?
No. Apart from that, we're not using it. But the thing is, we are instrumenting a lot of clusters, and we are deploying the Prometheus operator and Promptail and different tools. And if it would all be packaged as Grafana Agent, it would be better. And Loki people told me that the way to go is Grafana Agent. They were even thinking about dropping Promptail. So why invest on Promptail right now?
Right.
And
Yeah. So like, sorry. As Matt said, like one of the things we want to do with Flow is expose information more directly, more easily to the user. Don't hide it. But this is one specific case where like we need to make an upstream change so that we can eventually expose it to users. But I think I misunderstood at first what was going on here, and now that I have a better idea, we can hopefully help resolve this more quickly.
Sorry about that. I mistagged the post, the issue, most likely, since I saw the mention from the Prometheus operator.
No worries. All right. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understood you. But are you expecting something from me then?
No, I think we got it from here. I'll write a comment, kind of summarizing what I just said, and then we'll start trying to fix this.
Perfect. But again, from my discussion with the Loki people, with Promptail, they have the same kind of issue. They know that when you have some problem with discovery, it won't appear, and it's really hard to debug. And
Yep, that is one of the things we would like to improve with Flow. I think we're in a good spot with Flow, but there is no logging support just yet. But once it gets there, I think that'll help a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, great.
Cool.
Also, I believe there's no danger of like Promptail being discontinued or anything. We're reusing Promptail in the agent, but I think that we're just gonna continue using that.
Don't say that.
Okay.
The Loki team have been considering whether it makes sense to donate Promptail code to us. There's no decision being made yet, but it is not impossible that Promptail eventually gets deprecated in favor of just having it in the agent directly.
Cool.
And if you watch this YouTube video a year from now, nothing happened, then,
you know,
plans have changed.
All right. Does anyone else have any new comments or issues they want to bring up? If not, I will go into a little demo of kind of what we've done with Flow since last time we met. As I'm going through this, if at any point you have any questions or comments or feedback, feel free to interrupt me, raise a hand, put it in chat. I won't be offended by any of these, whatever it takes to get my attention. I'd much rather have some conversation going back and forth than me talking for like the next 10 minutes or so. All right, I'm going to attempt to share my screen. All right, everybody should see a white Chrome screen with some text on it, hopefully. Okay, awesome. So yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about Flow. We did, Pascal was the shepherd for release, the v028.0 release. That was truly an exciting one for us. Because it pushes this concept that I think probably dates back to like February on the initial talking about it, which is kind of a reimagining of interfacing with the agent that we've turned Flow. And we released kind of the initial usable portion of it yesterday after talking about it. So that's super exciting. And just to bring everybody up to date, if this is the first video on Flow or you haven't read the blog post, Flow is using what we'd call like a Terraform inspired syntax called River language that works off components. And we thought components, as we were developing more and more features in the agent, we found that it was being more difficult to figure out, to map the mental model with the configuration model with the code model. And after like 2 years of development of agent, we wanted to kind of synchronize those and hopefully make it so your mental model maps to the configuration model, and that it also maps the development model to make it easier. So some of the key points are, you can compose these components in pipelines. They're more self-contained and single-focused, and that they allow more flexibility in their usage and more directness. So I think we demoed the UI, maybe an earlier version of it at the last community call. So I just wanted to go through that again. I have a example we have. It consists of Grafana Agent, Mimir, and Grafana itself, kind of all running in a Docker Compose. And it's been running for a few hours. And this is the default page you get when you just go to the Grafana Agent. In my case, it's localhost 12345. And my camera just died. Fantastic.
The recording only shows the screen anyway. I think that's okay. Oh, did Matt die too? We see your mouse, Matt. We can't hear you though.
The demo effect.
Yep.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
excellent. So
Nice.
when my camera died, it somehow switched my audio to something totally different. Excellent. So this is the graph, and this is more of a how the components interact with each other, as opposed to what we might call a data flow graph, where you would see something like node exporter feeding to scrape. But this gives you a very good idea of how they connect. It gives you a quick viewpoint on whether things are healthy or not. And you can kind of see. So we're just going to click on one of these. Let's do the node exporter. And it takes you to this page that gives you a kind of a rundown of exactly what's going on. Now, this includes a lot of defaults that you're not going to define in your configuration that we'll take a look at here in a second. But, this gives you like a quick overview of what's going on. There's small little UI things like this line goes way past there. But it gives you that like ability to interact with the state of the system and see what's going on in a pretty good way. So we have all these arguments here. Arguments are things that are fed to it. And then exports are things that, are the outputs of a component. So in this is the node exporter. And it's basically just outputting the URL to be scraped. And you can kind of walk the tree from here. So we can go to the scrape node. The input argument targets is essentially the output from the one we spoke to earlier. What is wrong with the address?
I don't think it should be 0000. I think it's supposed to be localhost.
Oh, it's working, so it must be fine.
I think it probably still works, but we should change it to localhost.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. So and then you may notice this capsule, and Robert could jump here with a better explanation. But that's essentially a Go type that doesn't have a fully realized river expression around it.
Yeah. So basically, Flow is really like Terraform inspired, but since Grafana Agent inherently deals with telemetry pipelines, it doesn't make sense for us to represent everything as like a common type. Like not everything can be a string or a bool or a number. So we need ways to represent more complex types of users, stuff that like they can pass around things that move data in a pipeline, like streams of data. but there's no really way to show that value to the user. So those are called capsules because they encapsulate something internal to Grafana Agent. The Prometheus receiver capsule is basically a stream of metrics coming into the write-ahead log. Basically, the only way for us to show it is just say, like, hey, this is some capsule value, and it's given like this light gray font, so you know that it's like a, you know, not a real thing you could construct in a config file. It's just kind of read information.
Cool. And then we have some aspects have debug info. So this gives you information like on the set of targets for a scrape target, and it will give you, you know, last scrape duration. So if you think something's not getting values,
no,
go ahead, Robert.
Finish first. I was going to add something on to this.
Oh, so for instance, if you wanted to figure out like why aren't some, you know, scrapes coming through, you could take a look at this, and it would give you kind of a rundown of like when did it last scrape, what happened, and just give you some way to visually see what's going on.
Yeah, so this is one of the places where, from the discussion earlier, we could expose those errors where you would see that one of your pods isn't being scraped for some issue. There's usually a health field, like an error field here. So if that health says down, there will be an error field for that target saying what the scrape error was. But earlier we were talking about service discovery being an issue, and in that case, at the top here where you see like the health message, we could probably find a way to move, like, I couldn't even discover pods because of some reason, and that'd be at the very top of this page instead of kind of in the debug info.
Awesome. And then we can kind of keep walking through this. Like you can go to the relabel service. This is basically just runs relabel configs. We've renamed them rules, same exact syntax. And then finally, we have the remote write. I should have made this bigger. And this is just pushing to a Mimir instance. Now, one thing that I think with Flow that's been a big push for us, and shout out to Karen here, is helping us with documentation. Beforehand, our documentation for a lot of things that were Prometheus or Loki related would have a link that was essentially go look at their documentation. And sometimes that could get out of sync. So what Flow and has forced us to bring in is wrapping all the configuration and allowing us to put really good documentation on top of it. So all the components are listed that we support will be listed here on the website. And this is, for example, the remote write, which I think is probably actually the most complex one, or it certainly seems like it has a lot of stuff on it. And they're all going to follow roughly the same pattern. We're definitely working through some kind of UI and cleaning up like really long lines or like some coloring. But in general, we want just really top class documentation and be able to come here and get like one-stop shop for finding any sort of details that you may or may not want as just researching it. And by putting that documentation in the UI that you can just click on and immediately go, you know, that saves you a Google search, and maybe that Google search sends you to an out of date or wrong one. By just integrating there, we get some really good findability. I'm not going to go through all this, but in Flow, we have these concept of attributes and blocks. Attributes are kind of just setting discoverability. Good. That's a good one. And then blocks are just kind of a collection of settings for attributes, and they can include other blocks, obviously, like this kind of tree, not tree here, where auth is the child of HTTP client. And then we just kind of identify everything with notes, anything that might be tricky, we're trying to put here and basically make it to where you don't have to go outside of kind of this point to get the documentation, and everything's documented. And there may not be a one-to-one kind of transference because we may find better ways to wrap the configuration in a way that makes more sense. So far, it's mostly one-on-one with some naming changes, but as we go through, we may find better ways to handle that. All right. And just to give a tease on how the the documentation look, or the configuration looks. This is a file that represents what we were just looking at. As you can see, it's very HCL Terraform-like. And our goal is to be much more concise and readable and usable than YAML. You know, and I think we've done a pretty good job with that. Any other questions or comments so far? Cool. Go ahead.
Yep, it's really okay. I used to have quite the same syntax between the different tools from the Grafana ecosystem, Grafana and Prometheus ecosystem. So this brings a new syntax. Like for Prometheus relabels, I'm used to write them in a specific way, and means I have to change the way my mind works. Is it something that's planned to be moved also to other tools, or is it really specific for Grafana Agent?
Go ahead, Robert. You're itching to speak.
We don't know. It's really early days. We're gonna continue to grow this kind of as we get new requirements for things people want to do with the language. Right now, everything we wrote exists solely within the agent repo. I imagine we'll open it up and make it a separate project for other things people to use, but it's really going to be up to different teams if they want to switch away from the YAML-based configs to this. I think also there's really a movement right now around kind of Q being more and more popular. So it's likely that if these other projects do switch away from YAML, I don't even think that this might be the best choice. They might want to go for something like Q or JSON it. So I don't know. I do get that it is different. I think the growing list of things that the agent does facilitated, or like what's the word? Necessitated the need for a more flexible language than what YAML usually provides. So we'll have to kind of revisit in the future if like what problems it causes by having something that's just quite a bit different than how you'd configure our other things.
If nobody else has some questions, I keep going on.
Keep going on.
In my case, we do a lot of modifications like on service monitors and stuff like that. We have Kyverno, and we really rework the CRDs to add a lot of labels. So this kind of configuration will break what we're currently doing, right?
Well, good news. One of the things we're planning to do is supporting pod monitor, like retrieving pod monitors, probes, the Prometheus operator resources, like reading those from this config. So that way, if you're using CRDs, you can continue to use them as is. Well, I guess it depends on what the CRDs we're talking about are. But I'm talking about the Prometheus operator CRDs.
Yeah,
you'll be able to use those as is, not change them at all. But then you can configure a component here to look for those CRDs, and then that'll configure stuff for you.
Okay, so I still write my CRDs in YAML.
Yep, that doesn't change at all.
And Kyverno customizes them and changes everything. And okay, good. And then the Grafana agent will put another pass of reworking to transform them to River.
Yeah. Some like more or less that's kind of what we're thinking of doing. A pod monitor component for Flow.
Okay, and that brings me to my second question that I had from the beginning. Today, for users that already have a complex agent setup written in YAML and would like to move into River, is there an easy way to migrate, or do we have to rewrite all the configuration, or can we do a little bit of each? Or
so right now, because it's experimental, we didn't write any tooling to migrate. Once this becomes maybe beta, maybe stable, but at some point, we're going to provide tooling to convert the YAML config as it is today into this. And that way people can just rely on that. We just didn't write it now because things are still changing pretty quickly, and we don't want to have to maintain that tool while things are unstable.
Yeah, so that means I choose either I use one or the other way to configure my agent.
Yeah, I mean, for now, only use this if you're okay with like bleeding edge, breaking changes all the time. Like, continue using the YAML configs, like we're calling it the static mode. Continue using that mode because that's the most stable. And then once this matures a little bit, we'll have all the tooling to provide to migrate off to this.
Yeah, but I guess if I want the newest features, I would have to go through River.
More or less, right? Like, I think there's not going to be a lot of stuff for a while that Flow will do that the static agent doesn't. The flexibility of these pipelines, that'll definitely be you kind of have to use River for that. But if we're just talking about like collecting logs, metrics, and traces and having all like the embedded integrations, then you can stay with the static agent for now.
Yeah, and I think internally we've built some JSON scripts that essentially convert from YAML to Flow. So that can be a pilot example idea. We wouldn't write JSON it, but something to help convert while also allowing you to proceed. I think long term we want this to be the future, but that's a good ways away. And we understand people, have a large investment in the current YAML script. So we want to make it as transferable as possible. And we've been running Flow internally for a month and a half? Something like that.
August 4th.
Yeah, with probably, like several million series, I think, and I've been pretty happy with it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Well, going by my notes here. Yeah, and we haven't Pascal's wrote a awesome blog post that I would recommend anybody read that goes into a little bit more in depth, and links to some other the RFCs, some other assorted documentation we have. We've been trying to develop this as much in the public as possible. So there is RFCs or issues, or feel free to jump in. We definitely want anybody's feedback. And then you may have noticed with what we released, it's node exporter, scraper, relabel rules, and remote write. So it's a very kind of minimum viable product. That's an overused term for metrics. So you can use it, scrape it, and use node exporter. But definitely we're bringing more things to the table as time goes on. We just wanted to get something out to start soliciting feedback. So fleshing out metrics more so, adding logs and traces, more kind of Kubernetes integrations are definitely things on our roadmap that will happen. And yeah, it is essentially we just want to reach out to the community and get any feedback. This has been formed from our years of working with the agent and trying to figure out like what are the best paths forwards and how to build the agent better. But we definitely want to try to figure out how to resolve all the use cases that the agent currently solves. We want to apply them all to Flow. Maybe not the exact technical solution or the exact way it goes around it, but we want to handle any of the use cases that agent currently does within Flow. And yeah, go ahead, Robert.
I want to add the big disclaimer here. I think... okay, I mean, I'm biased because I've been working on the agent the longest, but I think that Flow is a really solid step towards reaching 1.0 and reaching like a unique agent that's not just a combination of all these different open source projects that we're importing directly. That being said, like if the overwhelming reception is we hate this, don't do this, like we're going to listen to that feedback. So far, I mean, it's only been less than a day, but the reception seems between neutral and positive, so that's mostly a good thing. But we're still paying attention to feedback, and we're more than happy to backpedal from this if it turns out that people feel like it's the wrong direction for us to take. Well, I shouldn't say we're happy to. We'll do it, but we won't be smiling as we do it.
All right. That's all I kind of had for my presentation. It's a quick overview of the UI and the format and talking about the future a little bit. So I will open up the conversation for any other questions or feedback or comments. All right. If no one has anything else, I'll go ahead and end the call, and then we will, if you're interested in the recording, it'll be posted up sometime Monday. I really appreciate everybody coming out and joining us here and letting us talk about Flow a little bit. Love to see you back, and I'll see everybody later.
Thanks, Matt.
Goodbye.